My 5-year-old son saved my life and ran to the neighbors to call 911. As he's choking me with a phone cord sitting on me in our living room. He left our baby. Devin was just a baby at the time. He left him sitting on the kitchen counter to chase after me. He has no, I
Yeah. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, this is very, very
Yes.
difficult for me.
That just doesn't shake you to your core as a father of a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old. Just the idea, just the thought of that, it makes me sick. But what's crazy about this is that the woman speaking and the crime that she just told you about is not even why we are here today. We are here for the homicide that he committed about 23 years ago. Now, this is a Miss Bonnie Jackson classic, so we'll get all of those details through this hearing. With that, let's jump in.
Okay, this is the case for Michael McBride, DOC number 401097, classified as a first felony offender, offense manslaughter, sentencing date November 17, 1998, sentenced to a total of 30 years. Parole date August 1st, 2021, good time July 27th, 2022, full term November 23rd, 2027. Is this information correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Good morning, Mr. McBride. I'm Bonnie Jackson. Your case has been assigned to me, and I'll be asking some questions of you.
Judge Jackson, I'm sorry, excuse me one moment. Miss Maggie and Teresa, can y'all please let us know where the victims are on this case, as well as Miss Barbera? You announced them here, but we don't see them in the room.
We're currently working on it.
Okay. Do we want to continue until they or wait until them to join, or continue?
Ms. Kelsey?
They are about to log on.
Okay.
They're about to log on. I think we'll continue with the hearing.
Okay.
All right. Ms. McBride, how old are you?
55.
Okay. And how long have you been incarcerated on this charge?
Since the date of the arrest, November 23rd.
But give me the number of years you've been incarcerated.
23, almost 23 and a half years, ma'am.
That's what I'm showing. And you were convicted of manslaughter. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Was that a plea, or did you go to trial?
That was a plea agreement.
Okay. Because you were originally charged with second-degree murder. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us a little bit about the case. Tell us what happened with the death of the victim in this case.
I had exited my home in my front yard in Baton Rouge. It was kind of dark. The victim approached me and was attempting to rob me. We got in a fight. He brandished a knife weapon, and during the struggle, I stabbed the victim. I had never been involved with anything like this. And after it was obvious that the victim passed away, I guess I panicked. I'm not going to say trauma and all that. I put him in my truck, and I didn't know where I was going, and I wound up putting him in a wooded area. They looked for him for like 2 months, and when they found him on a public matter of the news, I went down to the police department and turned myself in.
Well, Mr. McBride, you understand why there would be some skepticism with your account of what happened? Because certainly if you were acting in self-defense, that would have been a viable claim for you to have raised. You didn't call the police and explain to them, what you just told us, which would have been, I don't understand why you would think the thing to do would be to put the the victim in your truck and drive him somewhere. Was his body dismembered?
No, not by me, no ma'am. There was the report that came back from Mary Mannheim from LSU was that they had found something related to carnivorous biting on the victim, but there was nothing.
What I saw was that they found body parts.
Yes, ma'am.
Of the victim in this case.
Yes, ma'am. That was after I'd placed him in the wooded area. He'd been there so long. There was indications the animals had been right there.
Okay, well, yeah, again, it's kind of troubling that if this were in fact self-defense, you would not have asserted that. And you wouldn't have called law enforcement instead of taking the victim and dumping his body near some railroad tracks. But you know, that's your position, and so we'll move on. At that time, Mr. McBride, how old were you?
I was 31.
Okay, what kind of work were you doing?
I was a truck driver working down for a company in Geismar.
Okay, were you married or single?
I was single in the process of saving to be engaged. Didn't get that far.
All right. Do you have a history of substance abuse?
No, ma'am. Well,
Go ahead.
when I was younger, a little bit, but not my
Okay,
entire life.
okay. What do you call younger?
Early 20s.
And what do you call a little bit?
Experimental stuff from time to time. Marijuana.
What else?
And a little bit of cocaine, but that was it.
Okay, and when did the experimentation stop?
I guess 25, I believe.
And okay. So let's talk about what you have done while incarcerated for the last 23 years.
I spent my first year, 8 years, well, first year in the parish, and then after that, I went to Basile facility for 5 or 6 months, and then I was transferred to Angola for about 8 years. After that, I went to Hunts for 3 months and then Cottonport for the remainder of my time until I was eligible for work release to come here. While I was Cottonport, I got in 3 or 4 programs. I took my pre-release, and I was lucky enough to get in the maintenance department for the facility at Cottonport and spent my entire time there learning the electrical trade.
And you're currently in work release?
Yes, ma'am. I work for a company called TSI, it's Thermoplastic Services. They have contracts, or currently contracted with ExxonMobil. I've been with them almost 2 years now. I submitted a letter from them where I indicate that they've made it known they want to keep me employed. I would return to Baton Rouge, and they're contracted out on Highway 61 one of ExxonMobil's plants, and I would go directly there to work for them. They have a crew over there in that plant.
Tell me about your disciplinary record. How many write-ups have you had?
I wasn't able to get the information and the dates for those at this facility, but maybe 4, 5 over the years, and all of them were small things. One of them, I had a towel on my locker. I was late for work one day, sat at the wrong table at the kitchen. There was nothing that was like fights or anything serious.
I show that you have 300 days of good time credit for classes. Tell me some of the most impactful classes that you've taken?
Inside Out Fathers was
Do you
one.
have children?
I have one son that I haven't seen since this started. I went through Jamie. I heard Jamie Nizio's name mentioned that she's about to speak. She's the mother of my son. We split up right before this incident happened. She's in New York. I'm assuming she's still there. I haven't spoken to her since then.
And why did you take Inside Out Dads?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Why didn't you take Inside Out Dads?
Because I had made some mistakes with my son, being a father, and I thought maybe some of that stuff would help me down the
So
road.
what did you get out of that program?
To take more in account of, if the time comes, then I run into him, what his feelings are more than mine, that I've been absent so long. If I'm lucky enough to have him to want to reconnect with me.
So right now you don't have a relationship with your son?
No, ma'am.
Is that correct? What other courses stand out for you?
Anger management was kind of one of them. I was kind of disappointed in the way the inmates were teaching the class, because I thought some of the class could have been taught a little better. But there were some points in there where they talked about anytime something happens, instead of letting yourself build up anxiety and stress, to take time and really think about what's happening instead of having a knee-jerk reaction to something.
And what was it about the class that you thought was deficient?
It could have been better if it had been taught by staff. Sometimes inmates don't take things serious. It's a place to go to hang out and get out of the dorm.
So have you been involved with teaching any classes?
No. When I was in the maintenance department, Fort Cotton Port facility, whenever they would have to have someone in our department, in the electrical department, if they didn't know a lot, I did a lot of mentoring to help them learn the electrical trade. I was able to learn a lot over those years.
But other than that, not really.
No, ma'am. As far as education classes that they had, I think there was Inside Out Dad Anger Management, and I can't remember what the third one I took. I know there was a third one, and then I had the pre-release that I had already done before I come here.
Okay. So how do you feel about the crime you've committed?
I have responsibility in that. I mean, a young man lost his life. You know, I made horrendous mistakes.
My question was, how do you feel about it?
Which it hadn't happened, any of it, and not so much because of me. You know, I see a lot of young guys in prison that right now that doing so much of the wrong stuff, and then I see some they do well. I mean, who knows what this young man could have grown up to be? I mean, it's not an excuse. I mean, you spend this many years in prison, going back over your head the memories of your entire life, and yeah, I've thought about it. I mean, every scenario.
How do you think have you taken any victim awareness classes?
No, ma'am. I've never had anything to do with that being available to me. I think one of the classes at Cottonport, I think it spoke a little bit about that, but it wasn't something that really taught her anything. It was more of in the class, it teaches you to try to understand how that side of the family would feel.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. How you think they would feel? How you think they feel today? Listening at you today, if you're listening to you today, and they're confronting the notion that you're asking to get out early, how do you think that makes them feel?
There's a hole inside them. They're still angry, perhaps, and I understand that.
Because, I was asking about the crime, and maybe there was an indication that I saw in reading through some of the police reports and things that you were actually in the process of purchasing drugs from the person who was murdered.
Yes, ma'am. That was there was somebody that had indicated that, but that's not what that was about that night. I don't understand where that had even come
Well, why
from.
don't you do this? Why don't you walk me through step by step what happened that led up to the death of this young man?
I had come out of my house
Why?
one evening, and
Why?
I was putting some clothes in the back of my truck when he approached me in the driveway and said
Okay,
he said, "Give me your money." And
okay.
and
Was he armed?
he had something in his hand, but I didn't really know what it was at that moment.
Okay, and then what?
And he got closer,
Okay.
and we started struggling over the knife,
Wait a minute, whoa, what knife?
the knife that was in his hands. At the beginning, I could tell it was something in his hands, but I couldn't identify it was a knife until he got a lot closer.
So it was his knife.
Yes, ma'am. It was evening. It wasn't all the way dark, but it was when he walked in the yard. I couldn't
Okay.
exactly until he got a lot closer. I couldn't tell that it was a knife.
So how did you gain control of the knife?
When he lunged at me and I tried to get out of the way, he kept coming, and I just kept trying to grab at that hand with his knife and keep it away from me.
So you got cut up pretty bad then, your hand, if you're trying, because if he's holding the knife, the only way you can get it from him is to grab the blade.
No, ma'am, I'm holding onto his wrist. I'm trying to control where his hand is going with the knife.
Okay, and then what happened?
And then we both went to the ground and we kept struggling. And he
And
says,
then what?
he said he was going to kill me.
Okay, and then what?
After a few seconds, whatnot, I got the knife and I stabbed him with it.
Okay, once you got the knife, then you were in control of the situation, correct?
I guess I don't know if I was or not, ma'am. I was terrified. I was scared.
All right, Mr. McBride, thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Kelsey.
All right, thank you. We will hear from Miss Jamie now.
Hi.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, make your statement. We can hear you.
This is very difficult for me to relive this whole thing. I live in fear for myself and my son. I do not want him to be any part of his or my life at this point. Our son is 28 years old, and he can certainly make decisions for himself. But I know that I myself am petrified for him to get out of prison. I would have preferred a life sentence for him. He attempted to kill me as well. He strangled me with a telephone cord. He has stolen a lot of money from me. He has stolen a car from me. He destroyed my life pretty much. I have two wonderful children. I do have another older son as well, who looked up to Michael at the beginning. That has since been lost as well. I'm very disappointed to learn that he may get early release later this year. I would like to obtain an order of protection for myself and actually both of my children. Because again, I am in fear for my life. He became a monster shortly after we were together, with the drugs, and our Michael left the hospital, went back to Baton Rouge, proceeded to cheat on me with another woman while our son was laying in ICU in New Orleans. So that proved to me right then and there that he had no respect for myself or for our child or my other son for that matter. So to relive this now is a nightmare for me. And Michael, I really want you to stay in prison and realize what you did and the lives that you destroyed.
Just speak to the board, Miss Jamie.
I'm sorry.
Speak directly to the board. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want the board to realize that although he is saying that he's changed and he's taken responsibility, I have a hard time believing that. Again, I live in fear all the time, and I have thought about this day for a very long time. And again, I would like to be granted an order of protection for myself and both of my children. Oh, another thing is I have never received 1 penny of child support for our son. I raised him on my own. Just to let that be known, never 1 penny in 28 years of child support have I received for him. And we struggled. We were in and out of shelters, especially when Michael tried to strangle me. My 5-year-old son saved my life and ran to the neighbors to call 911. As he's choking me with a phone cord sitting on me in our living room. He left our baby. Devin was just a baby at the time. He left him sitting on the kitchen counter to chase after me. He has no, I
Yeah. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, this is very, very
Yes.
difficult for me.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. And, just so you know that regardless of what happens today, there's a good time day here of July 2022. So that is does have that. And then also as far as protective orders, that's something that you can legally go take care of and do that through the local legal channels. Thank you. All right, Mr. McBride, would you like to make a statement on your behalf?
I've learned a lot. I made mistakes in my life. The only thing I would like to say to the board as far as Jamie, we'd been separated for a year when this incident happened, and she was living in New York. I made some mistakes with her, but a lot of this I don't understand what's coming from her. But we were not together at the time. We'd been separated quite a while. Other than that, I respect the decision that you folks made. I was 31. Been gone a long time. Man doesn't stay that long without realizing that he's made mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I'm a lot better. I know that.
All right. Thank you. Is the panel prepared to vote? Ms. Jackson?
Ms. McBride, you've taken a lot of classes. Apparently you have stayed out of trouble within the institution. But what I sense is, although you've been a body present in the classes, I just don't get the sense that you internalized a lot of the things that were trying to be taught to you. You seem to have a total lack of empathy. And I don't know whether it's just because of your personality, you're not capable of expressing empathy, but you don't seem to have any. You don't seem to have any genuine remorse for the fact that you took a young man's life. And that's very concerning to me.
I do have remorse.
You had your opportunity to express that, but you did not really. And I appreciate Miss Jamie. I know this was very difficult for her to come and share this information with the board, and I want her to know that that's, you know, her viewpoint is something that we do take into consideration. We also had opposition from, you know, the victim's mother, that this was a really, you know, bad crime. Your explanation of it just was not satisfying to me. I don't think you are truthful about what happened. But I just feel like because of the proximity to your good time release date and your lack of self-awareness and victim awareness, my vote today would be to deny, because you're going to be released regardless on July 27th of 2022. But today my vote is to deny.
Right, Miss Renata.
Mr. McBride, I too am going to vote to deny. You have a proximity of your good time date, but I can't support you today. So my vote today is to deny.
Okay. You have 2 votes to deny your parole. I'm also going to vote to deny your parole for the same reasons as stated. You do have a good time date. Work hard until you get to that date, and wish you good luck. The 3 votes to deny today, your parole's been denied. And let's see, 12 o'clock, we'll adjourn.
And I got to tell you, I am disappointed that Miss Tracy Barbera, my favorite, I think many of your favorite ADA, didn't show up. If you caught there at the beginning, she was supposed to come into the room and speak, and she is the best, but we didn't hear from her. And again, the first time I heard this here, and I just have to assume she couldn't get in the call. Something happened. She's that's very unique for her. And they just kept moving through with the process. And, you know, Brennan Kelsey, who never shows any empathy, still, I didn't think showed much empathy either. He needs to do some victim awareness classes, the way he goes, yes, ma'am, go ahead, ma'am, yes, ma'am. When the victims are crying their eyes out, he actually, I think, showed the most empathy I've ever seen from him for this hearing. So I don't know. He had it was good. It just wasn't as bad as it normally was. And, you know, what's interesting, I think this guy was just totally caught out of left field when his basically ex shows up, because that's not what he's in for. And he's probably like, what is she doing here, coming in like a wrecking ball when the ADA doesn't make it, the family doesn't make it for the man he killed, and he's like, what? But, you know, it's interesting. He paid no child support. He heard her, and she was coming back to take her voice. Some of you might look at this and say, oh, nothing like a woman scorned, and maybe that's true too. But it also, there's a moment of power there. I'm not going to sit in the corner and be afraid. I'm going to tell it to somebody what it is, how we fear for our lives, that moment within. You heard her in her voice, and she told it to the parole board. And I think we got to give her credit for that. Not I do. I want to call it out because it takes a lot. It takes a lot. And he showed nothing. He couldn't even, all he had to do in that scenario, which I think somebody who's all these years later, he's getting out anyways in good time in like 6 months, would be to say, I was a crummy person. She's right. I can't believe what I did to my son. I wish I could have paid child support. I don't have there are so many things that a normal person that feels empathy for their own for the horrible situation that he did, that had the 5-year-old, if it was his son, run to call for help because he's strangling her, and he saved her, and what he can say is, I don't know, and that's not even for the man he killed. I don't believe him for 1 second, as Miss Bonham Jackson called him out on it. But there are people that just don't have empathy. There are people that, and I wish I can give you an update on his case. He has been out. It's 2025 by the time I'm doing this recording, but his name, even Sarisha doesn't have information on him. The name is popular. There's nothing on him. So you might say no news is good news in this case. And we're going to jump into another hearing, another Miss Bonnie Jackson. I wouldn't say classic, but it is another hearing. And this one has a twist. And they both have something in common. They both killed a man. It both involved a pickup truck. It both involved, well, I'll leave it at that. With that, let's jump in.
And I got inebriated. And before I knew it, this guy gave me a ride and back to my motel room, and pretty much that's all I remember until I woke up and he was dead.
And then at that point, you left the scene, or?
Yes, sir, I did. I was scared.
So you left where you were from, or did you take the deceased somewhere, or what?
I took him and put him in a dumpster, sir, and ran.
Well, we're about to watch the parole hearing of a man who's been locked up 22 years for doing just that. But that's not all he has in his jacket. He seems to have a problem with drinking, and that may come up later. Now, this parole hearing, I think he has a secret weapon. He has something that's going for him. And what it is that he's an expert cabinet maker, and he built the cabinets behind Miss Bonnie Jackson and Miss Cheryl Renatza, and that might come into play. Anyways, let's take a step back. Let's jump in, and I'll share an update at the end.
Okay, this is the case for Roy Burton, DOC number 453532, classified as a fifth felony offender, offense manslaughter, sentencing date October 25th, 2002, sentenced to a total of 33 years, parole date August 1st, 2021, good time January 18, 2023, full term June 24th, 2029. Is this information correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Kelsey.
Mr. Burton, how you doing today?
I'm good, sir, and you?
Good. How old are you, sir?
I'm 62, sir.
How long have you been, how many years have you been incarcerated on this 33-year sentence?
22, sir.
What are you currently doing?
I'm actually in work release. I'm working for Ronnie Jet and Jet Food Marts. I build cabinets and maintain his property.
Okay. For that's your work release? And where are you
Yes.
housed? Where are you housed?
East Louisiana Correctional Center, sir.
Okay. So 22 years. So you were about 40, you were about 42 when this crime was committed, correct?
Yes, sir.
Or around 40. That's not very, that's, I consider it young, but it's in terms of this, it's it's a little age on you. Tell me what happened. Tell me about the crime. Tell me what happened.
It was just a sad affair all around, sir. It's probably one of the lowest points of my life. A situation happened that I lost control in, and it just ended up in Mr. Savoy's death.
Now, were you using drugs or alcohol, or
I was a drinker, sir.
you were drinking? 'Cause it looks like you've had a history of some DWIs, correct?
Yes, sir.
No drugs involved?
No, sir.
So what happened? Just give me a good overview of exactly what happened. You don't have to get into the deep details, but so you just, is this a friend of yours, a guy you were involved with, or what?
No, sir. I was coming through Lake Charles. I broke down. I was working at a day labor center until I got my van fixed. And I got inebriated. And before I knew it, this guy gave me a ride and back to my motel room. And pretty much that's all I remember until I woke up and he was dead.
And then at that point, you left the scene, or?
Yes, sir, I did. I was scared.
So you left where you were from, or did you take the deceased somewhere, or what?
I took him and put him in a dumpster, sir, and ran. And they picked me up in St. Tammany Parish.
In his vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And so you're 40 years old. What are you doing? You have a lot of years of working, a lot of years of life. I mean, what were you doing up until that point? Where were you living? What were you doing? I mean, how'd you come across that to get that drunk and make that terrible mistake?
At the time, sir, I was working for Lazar Yachts in Tampa Bay, Florida. I had taken a 2-week vacation. I spent a week up with my mother and my children in Ohio. And then I went out west to see a couple friends. And on the way back, this is when this situation happened.
And so you sound like you're doing a lot of traveling. Were you working while you were traveling?
No, sir, I was on vacation.
Where were you living?
Well, at the time, I was living in Tampa.
Well, you've had a little while in jail. Tell me what you've been doing. What you've been doing to better yourself. What have you learned? What classes and treatment have you taken? Tell me what's been going on.
I'm taking stress management, anger management, preparing for success on the outside, financial management, getting ahead, living in balance. I've taken numerous courses. I signed up for 3 or 4 more courses when I was in City of Faith up in West Monroe at their work release center. But due to the COVID, I could no longer continue to go into school. They canceled all the classes. I tried to stay.
Cage your rage and anger management, it looks like.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you've had some substance abuse. I guess in living in balance, you've had some substance abuse. You had some any other substance abuse?
Through stress management, anger management, preparing for success. On your pre-release, you have alcohol and drug counseling, and getting ahead. The same thing, sir. I truly believe in it.
So what are you going to do to make sure you stay clean and sober if you were fortunate enough to be released early?
Well, sir, to stay around positive people that have no substance abuse in their life. Go to
that's a start, but you're going to need some work, I suspect. I mean, you're going to go to NA or AA or any type of substance abuse, or I mean.
Certainly, sir.
Are you familiar with AA?
Yes, sir.
Have you taken any AA classes or been involved in AA while you've been around?
No, sir, I haven't. I spent the majority of my time working.
And that's good. And like I said, you have done very well for yourself, for sure. You've got a lot of recommendations. You've looks like you've done very well. When's the last disciplinary write-up you've had?
oh geez, probably 18 years ago.
You know how many disciplinary rights you've had since you've been in jail?
2, sir.
2 in 22 years. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have a high school diploma, a GED, college behind you?
Yes, sir, I do. High school diploma I got when I was in the Marine Corps. Then 2 years Bluffton Community College.
So you were in the service for how long?
3 years, sir.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So if you were, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? If you were to be released early, where are you going to go? What are you going to do?
Well, at the present time, I'm going to be living at the St. Joseph House. I'm going to continue working for Roddy Jet Food Marts. That's where I'm presently employed.
You're going to maintain your current job and live at the Joseph Homes, right? I have information here where they've accepted you.
Yes, sir.
You have some law enforcement opposition, some victim opposition. There's nothing you can do about that. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And if you could speak to the victim, the victim's family, what would you say?
I would tell them how sorry I am for all the pain and anguish that I've caused their family. It's a terrible thing. I just wish there was something I could do to make it better.
Warden, you have any input there for us?
Yeah, I've known Burton for a little bit over 10 years. I retired from Dixon, and I used to drive a transport bus. We used to pick him up from headquarters and take him down to headquarters where he was assigned and maintenance there. From time to time, I worked at headquarters, so I've been around Mr. Burton some. Never had any issues with him when he was at headquarters working. He's been at my facility now for approximately 6 months. Jump in and help outside of his regular work while he's here. If it's anything we got going on at the facility that he can help us with, he help us with. I just doesn't have anything negative I could say about him at this point.
Great. Well, yeah, it looks like I said, you do have a lot of letters of recommendation in your file that gone through, and looks like you've done very well for yourself. We'll let you answer. Ms. Cheryl Renatz has a question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kelsey. Well, how you doing, Mr. Burton?
I'm doing fine, ma'am. You?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Can I call you Grumpy?
Yes, ma'am.
That's how I know you. I have also been around Mr. Burton. We call him Grumpy for quite a number of years. Do you recognize the background behind me?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
He built it. So, I like everything that you've said today. Your record is not that good. You're classified as a fifth offender, but you and I have had that discussion in the past. I think you've done very well for yourself when you went to work release. In the record, there's some letters. Is it the Washita cabinets? I forget, or West Monroe, wherever you were working, and you were tutoring, I guess, other folks and helping them with the trade. And there's some very complimentary letters in the record to that effect. So I appreciate you reaching out to help others. And I like what the staff there had to say about you. So I just wanted to say hello. I don't have any particular questions of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, now would you answer Miss Bonnie Jackson, please?
Yes,
Good
sir.
morning, Mr. Burton. How you doing? Pretty good?
Fine, ma'am, and you?
Tell me again about your transition plan.
My transition plan is I'll be going to the St. Joseph House.
Is that in Baton Rouge? Is that in Baton Rouge?
Yes, ma'am. It's right down there around headquarters. It's not too
Okay,
far.
and how did you connect with St. Joseph's House?
Miss Linda, when I was at the police barracks, I met Miss Linda, and I ended up actually doing some work for her.
Mhm.
And we became associates through the work that I did for her. And I'm going to continue to work at my present job at Jet Food Marts.
Okay, that's another thing. What do you do at Jet Food Mart?
Well, I do anything from cleaning dishes to bagging ice to stocking coolers to building the cabinets. Right now, we're doing some major renovations on the store in Clinton, and I'm building some cabinets for an outdoor kitchen venue.
How much do you make doing that?
I make $12 an hour, ma'am.
Okay. Because you are apparently a skilled cabinet maker, and I understand that the cabinet shop that you had previously worked for wanted to hire you, and I was just curious as to why you weren't going to pursue using your skills as a cabinet maker as your primary source of income.
Well, at this present time, I've promised Ronnie Jett that I would take care of these jobs before I seek any other employment.
Okay.
Plan on working for the next 2 years until I'm ready for Social Security.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you this. After you leave St. Joseph's House, where do you plan to live?
I'm thinking about Covington, ma'am.
And why Covington?
There's a couple cabinet shops over there willing to take me on.
Okay. Where's your family?
My family's in Ohio, ma'am. I've
Do you
lost
have-
both. I've lost my fiance. My oldest son has passed away. I'm just going to stay down here in the warm weather.
All right. Well, that's understandable. But do you have any siblings?
Yes, I do. I've got a son over in Texas.
Okay, that's a child. Will you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, yes, I do. They're all in Ohio, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have contact with them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because it's important to have family support. To be successful, it is important to have family support. And I didn't see you list any family as contact people. So I just was concerned about what appears to be a lack of family support, but you've answered that.
Yes, ma'am. I love my family. They love me, and we're in contact weekly.
Okay, well, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Burton.
All right, would you like to make a statement on your behalf, Mr. Burton?
I'm very sorry about this whole situation, this whole incident. It's very tragic. Um, it's just terrible. But I think that I'm ready to move on with my life and be an asset to the community instead of a liability.
All right, thank you. Is the panel prepared to vote? I'll vote first. Mr. Burton, you've done well. You've done well on 2 write-ups in 22 years. That's very impressive. You highly recommended. Great comments from the warden there. Everywhere you've done a lot of work. You have taken classes throughout the years when you can. Have, to me, a good transition plan. Business homes is a really good place to be, and you sound like you have your job ahead of you as well. I would vote to grant your parole because of the good work you've done, low risk score, a good institutional record. I would like for you to to be involved in NAA. I'd like for you to be involved in NAA. I'd like for you to do 2 times a week. 2 times a week, go to NAA. I mean, you had a problem. That's a problem that you never want to occur. It's something that doesn't go away, and something that you'll be living with as an addict for the rest of your life. I'd like for you to report to your parole officer weekly for the first 60 days.
Yes, sir.
And I would like for you to have a curfew from 10 p to 6 a. So, there's really no, unless you're working or at church, there's really no reason for you to be hanging out late anyway, right?
You got it, sir.
That's right. So, again, I wish you good luck. My vote is to grant you parole with those stipulations on just one vote. But I wish you good luck. Ms. Renatza?
Well, Grumpy, my vote today is to grant you parole. You've got an excellent record. You've done good work. You've done community service. You have a low risk score, and I think you have a pretty solid plan. So I wish you well. Good luck.
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson?
And Mr. Burton, I also am voting in favor of your early release. I concur with the comments of my colleagues, and I accept the same conditions of release as put in place by Mr. Kelsey. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, you have 3 votes to grant your parole. You understand the stipulations?
Yes, sir.
All right, 3 votes to grant. The parole's been granted. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
We'll adjourn at 11:31 East Feliciana. Thank you, Warden.
I am convinced that the cabinet making tree thing that made a big difference, and I don't blame him. Why wouldn't it? If you see the man every day building those cabinets, I remember my father once had custom cabinets built in his office. In the first home that we bought, we were renters for most of my life, and then when he got this office, there was a man that was in there for day after day after day building these built-in cabinets, and he was an artist, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. And I get it. And look, he served his time well. He was on work release. They released him. So all I can say, as Dr. Grande would say, there'd be one thing for certain: we would never see Mr. Burton again.
Name is Roy Burton, ma'am.
And your DSC number?
453532.
Okay, Mr. Burton, you're before this panel today with allegations of violation of your parole. I'm going to read, well, first of all, do you have a piece of paper in front of you that indicates that you've signed a revocation questionnaire?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The answers to that indicate that you are not eligible for appointed counsel. Did you retain an attorney?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We'll go ahead and proceed. I'm going to read the allegations against you and ask you to enter a plea of guilty, not guilty, or guilty with a statement. Violation 4A says that you were engaged in criminal activity as evidenced by your arrest by the Louisiana State Police on 8/29/2024, where you were charged with DWI first. You had a blood alcohol content at the time of 0.203. And you were billed with misdemeanor DWI due to the fact that it had been 10 years since you had your last conviction. However, you're currently serving your sentence for DWI third. And at the time that you were arrested, you did plead guilty to DWI first. How do you plead now?
Well, ma'am, I do plead guilty to the DUI first. I talked to Mr. Tom over in Don over in time computations, because in 2017 I petitioned the St. Tammany courts to take that third offense DUI and run it concurrent with the 30 years I was doing for manslaughter. So that conviction should have been over. And when I talked to them, they said they took it out of Cajun. I talked to Jonathan Vining, and he said everything was taken care of.
That's immaterial in terms of, did you plead guilty to DWI first on 10/7/2024? Okay. The second part of that is you were issued a citation for hit and run.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how did you plead to that?
Guilty, ma'am.
Okay. Number 10, you're currently $141 in arrears of supervision.
Yes, ma'am. And on the supervision, yes, I am behind. On the day that I was arrested, I'm on Social Security. On that day, I get my check, and that's when I pay my probation fees. When they first changed the way you pay, I pay online, And when they moved it to Texas, I couldn't get online for a month because
Okay.
the system was so, it wasn't properly set up and they were still working the bugs out. I'll pay that today.
That's not the biggest issue that's before us today. We have today with us Miss Ashley Williams, who
Yes,
is a probation and parole officer. I think that it would be an appropriate time for Ms. Williams to go ahead and address her concerns with the board.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to attend today. Yes, ma'am, I am seeking revocation for Mr. Roy. In addition to the hit and run and the DWI that we've already discussed, my concern primarily was the BAC. I have discussed it with our DA's office here, and they have verbally admitted to me that he should not have been eligible to even be billed as a DWI first, because that 10-year time period he was incarcerated, and LARS allows that they are not eligible for the DWI charges to restart if the reason they didn't incur a new charge during that time frame was due to incarceration. So that is obviously primarily my concern is public safety. I do feel like he did get a lucky draw with that. And I think he was aware of that, which is why he pled to it at the arraignment. However, I did not feel it appropriate in the idea of public safety to allow it to just be seen as a technical based on the fact that it was only a misdemeanor. I do want to bring to the board's attention as well. We did have a situation with Mr. Roy. He was erroneously released from St. Tammany Parish Jail at the beginning of December, back on December 5th. We were not made aware of it until January 3rd. So he was re-detained yesterday and placed back in jail, which is why he's there for the hearing today. But one of the arguments Mr. Roy had previously made to me was that he would need treatment and that's all he needed. However, he didn't check in with probation and parole when he was released from jail, and to my understanding, did not do anything to seek any kind of treatment when he was out, as he wasn't supposed to be. So I just have concerns going forward that I'm going to see any change in behavior from him. And I feel allowing him to continue on supervision would only put the public at risk for further injury or harm.
Thank you very much for your attendance today, as well as your testimony. I'm going to ask at this time if Ms. Stapleton has any questions.
Yes, well, I really don't have a question. I've got a statement, and I agree with the officer, the agent that was just on here, that the first thing you do when you do get out is you have a BAC level of 0.203. And right there it says, I will refrain from illegal use of drugs or alcohol. So you were involved in illegal activity like that, and you are a public safety risk because you certainly don't have it under control. You're drinking while driving. So I have the same concerns that she does.
Mr. Prater, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
And I don't have any questions either. I think that that's one of the biggest safety risks we have in public. We're prepared to vote, Ms. Stapleton.
I vote to revoke based upon your illegal activity with drinking, DWI, number 4, the hit and run, and your arrears of $141. So number 4 and number 10.
Mr. Prater?
Yes, vote to revoke because of violation of Rule 4, it's criminal behavior, DWIs, and drinking, hit and run.
And my vote is also to revoke based on your pleading guilty to criminal behavior. Again, I want to reiterate, Ms. Williams, we appreciate your attendance today. That concludes our business. It's 10:09, and we're going to conclude. Thank you very much.
Wow. And they made quick work of him. They don't mess around with the DUI thing. That's one thing that we see across the board. Well, I was going to say on almost every state, but Iowa is always taken out of the picture. There's just something that's very tangible that parole boards, it's like, well, you drink, then you're going to drive and you'll probably kill someone. And that's very easy to trace. And we don't want that on our conscience. We don't want that in the newspaper. We don't want that to be a blemish on our record as a parole board member. And I just wish they took that approach with children. Louisiana, I'm not getting on them. They do. They have seemed to be doing a great job, but the other states, no. And it's just, I almost want to feel bad for him. I do. But then at the same time, it's like, you just got out of prison. You got a gift because you were able to make them their cabinets and they paroled you. You got out early on your 30-year sentence. 2022, he's out, I guess, about 3 years. And you got to remember, he's making the choice to get back into his vehicle and drive. It's on him. Don't do it. You can go home and drink your heart's desire. Although I'm sure he's not. It would have been a violation. And he didn't. And you know what's interesting? The parole officers showed up, and we very rarely see that in Louisiana for revocation hearings. In other states, you see it almost all the time. In Louisiana, it's just a different process. And you could hear it was Miss Stapleton thanked him, I think. Was it Miss Stapleton or Miss Ledoux? It might have been Miss Ledoux. Thanked him twice. Thanked her twice for showing up twice. She thanked him, made sure to thank it at the end because I get they want it. It's valuable to have the input there. And again, it's how do you make that choice to get back in the car? Now he's backing, I guess, 8 years. Will we see him again? I think theoretically we might see him again in 2 years or something. But let me just go over what Sir Richard found on this appeal. Remember what he's in for, which is killing a man and throwing a body in a dumpster. And he used his, well, I drink too much as an excuse. And even with Bonnie Jackson on the board, they didn't question him. And again, I think it goes back. When you build someone something beautiful and you see them every day working away, you're gonna get a little bit of leeway. That's just my thoughts. But on April 30th, 2000, the victim was found dead, wrapped in a blanket, next to the dumpster behind Market Basket Grocery Store in Lake Charles, Louisiana. It was determined that the victim, a young man of slight build, was approached from behind by the defendant and strangled with the bondage cord. Ain't that different? Well, I guess what he didn't say. He just said he had no memory. He had blacked out. But isn't that scary, huh? Isn't that scary? When the victim was found with the bungee cord was still fastened around his neck. Again, we got none of that in the last parole hearing. There was no sign of struggle. After killing the victim, the defendant stole his new black Nissan pickup truck. The defendant was arrested in the victim's truck in St. Minipier, and while driving intoxicated. Oh, is that how he got his third DWI? You can't make this stuff up. I was wondering, when I first saw this revocation hearing, I didn't see the parole hearing first. I saw the revocation hearing first. And they bring up the third DUI and killing someone. I automatically assumed, remember, I saw revocation first in 2025 before I looked in the spreadsheet, and Sir Richard said, man, dude, we covered his parole hearing in 2022. Make sure you connect the dots. I assumed it was a vehicular homicide case. I couldn't believe it when I watched it that no, he had happened to have just killed him. And this is a dangerous man. And you could see in everything, there's no empathy, there's no emotion. The last parole board, in my opinion, really did release a dangerous homicidal killer. And the man gets back in the car and drunk and hits someone and runs. So no, he belongs in prison. Let's be real. So, and then that was pretty much it. Burton himself admitted on the morning of April 29, 2000, that the apple professed, blah, blah, blah. I guess they needed Mr. Mirabella in this here, in that last hearing. They didn't even go through the motions. What's your gut? You're going to go to AA. After having been drinking all night, had ridden his bicycle to a lakefront in front of Lake Charles. Shortly after arriving, he met the victim who having a pickup truck and observing the appellant to be drunk, too drunk to even ride a bicycle, offered him a ride back to his motel, which he gladly accepted. The bicycle was placed in the back of the pickup truck. What's this? Under the statute, felony murder is committed when the perpetrator is engaged in perpetration or attempted perpetration of aggravated SA arson, aggravated burglary, aggravated second kidnapping, aggravated escape by shooting. Oh, so is this because, what are they saying here? Did they think he was up to something else? No, I don't see that. Then, okay, so into the back of the pickup truck. During the trip back to the motel, the appellant continued to drink while conversing with the victim. During the course of the conversation, he passed out from alcohol consumption. He was awakened sometime later to find the victim. Oh, there you go. Okay. So that's his story. And all right, that's kind of what I thought he was alluding to. All right, I should just read the whole thing. Let me just read the whole thing. So he woke up to this, and because the appellant was still under the effects of his previously consumed alcohol, coupled with a theory from the unwelcome sexual intrusion upon his person, the appellant has little memory of what transpired until he realized that the victim was dead at his own hands. In a fit of panic, he moved the victim's body to a nearby parking lot and left the area. The victim's vehicle. So this is why it was second degree, and this is why what he claims. Now, whether that's true or not, I guess no one will ever know. But that's what he claims. Under Louisiana law, specific intent is a state of mind which exists when the circumstances indicate that the offender actively desired to prescribe criminal consequences to follow his act failure to act. Because specific intent is a state of mind, it would not be proven as fact, but may be inferred by the circumstances and actions of the accused, as well as the extent of the severity of the victim's injuries. What's interesting is I don't think he mentioned that in the parole hearing, which maybe means, I don't know what that means, but normally someone, when they're using that, if it was an excuse, I think it'd be the first thing they mention. Evidence that a criminal defendant choked his victim's death has been determined sufficient to establish specific intent to kill. Based on the apparently undisputed fact that Burton approached his victim from behind and choked him to death with a bungee cord, there was ample evidence that he possessed the requisite specific intent to kill. Burton elected to go to trial. There was apparently sufficient evidence to convict him of second degree. Burton claims that the court-appointed trial counsel was mistaken in his belief that Burton had committed second-degree murder. Burton implies that the mistake belief in the nature of the charge amounted to deficient performance on the part of counsel. However, as shown above, Burton is incorrect. The available evidence strongly suggests that Burton would have been convicted of specific intent murder had he elected to go to trial. Burton has not shown that counsel performance was deficient in a negotiated plea agreement to manslaughter. More importantly, even if Burton could show deficient performance on the part of counsel, he cannot show prejudice as shown above, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So let me see what this says. To the fact I know, and I did not have intent to hurt anybody. I wanted the truth to be known. I didn't want any lies. I didn't want to fabricate any stories to try to prove my innocence, to drag this family through any more than it had already been dragged through. I wanted this to end. I wanted the truth to be known. I'm scared. How do you look at somebody and tell them that you've taken their loved one's life? So interesting. I can't imagine him saying those words. There's no justification for that. In other words, it is clear that Burton decided to plead guilty to manslaughter because he was in fact guilty of that offense. His claim that the deficient performance of his trial attorney was the cause of fact that his plea is refused by the very record he had submitted. Since Burton had not shown deficient performance on the part of the counsel, since he cannot demonstrate prejudice, his claim of ineffective assistance to counsel failed. So finally, Burton. He wanted to plead manslaughter and they refused it? Is that what they're saying? Excessive sentence. I'll put the link in the description also below. Finally, Burton contends his 30-year sentence was excessive because the trial court used factors found to be outside the permissible scope of inquiry of the United States Supreme Court. Of course, they didn't. Burton was convicted of manslaughter under Louisiana law. Manslaughter is punishable for up to 40 years, and they gave him a 30-year sentence. It's interesting. It was manslaughter, and he still got 30 years. But I guess manslaughter is second-degree murder in Louisiana, I think. it's not like, every states have certain verbiage that can be confusing. Some states but there you go. He was charged with second-degree murder and theft. In April 2, he did plead guilty to manslaughter. He didn't go to trial, and then he was sentenced to 30 years. He gets out after serving 22 years. He's out for about 3 years before he gets revoked. And man, he really only has himself to blame. It's just that simple. And they made quick work of him. And so this is in the playlist, The Return Of, if you want to see more hearings where people either get paroled and revoked, or we have every type of. We actually have someone who came up 4 times. We have someone who's coming up again for a 4th time sometime soon. So make sure to check out that playlist. And with that, what you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kelsey. Well, how you doing, Mr. Burton?
I'm doing fine, ma'am. You?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Can I call you Grumpy?
Yes, ma'am.
That's how I know you. I have also been around Mr. Burton. We call him Grumpy for quite a number of years. Do you recognize the background behind me?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
He built it. So, I like everything that you've said today. Your record is not that good. You're classified as a 5th offender, but you and I have had that discussion in the past. I think you've done very well for yourself when you went to work release. In the record, there's some letters. Is it the Washita cabinets? I forget, or West Monroe, wherever you were working, and you were tutoring, I guess, other folks and helping them with the trade. And there's some very complimentary letters in the record to that effect. So I appreciate you reaching out to help others. And I like what the staff there had to say about you. So I just wanted to say hello. I don't have any particular questions of you.
My 5-year-old son saved my life and ran to the neighbors to call 911. As he's choking me with a phone cord sitting on me in our living room. He left our baby. Devin was just a baby at the time. He left him sitting on the kitchen counter to chase after me. He has no, I
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
sorry, this is very, very
Yes.
difficult for me.